So Crystal Palace had an absolutely fantastic season last season. They, of course, won the FA Cup for the first time in their history, their first ever major trophy, and as a result have qualified for the UEFA Europa League. But a spanner has been thrown in the works because it is possible that Palace may be kicked out of the UEFA Europa League. But how is this? How has this happened? What is going on here? Why might Palace be kicked out of the competition? Well, it is all down to multi-club ownership. One of those incredible buzzwords that you absolutely hate to hear in modern football. The vast majority of Premier League clubs these days are the head of a multi-club ownership model, and Palace are no different. Now, they have a few different owners. It's a consortium of owners. They don't just have one of them. But one of the biggest ones is, of course, John Textor. But the problem is that his Eagle Holding Group also owns Lyon in France. Now, Lyon have, of course, qualified for the Europa League as well, and the way that I believe it works in terms of European competitions is that if there is a case of one club being kicked out of a competition due to multi-club ownership, then the club that finished lowest in their respective league will be kicked out. In this case, that is Palace. Palace finished, 12th, something like that in the Prem, while Lyon qualified for the Europa League by finishing about 5th, I think, in France. They qualified through their league position rather than winning a cup, unlike Palace, who of course won the cup. So now you may remember that last year we had actually a similar situation. These are being Manchester City of England and Girona of Spain, who are of course both owned by the City Group. Now, both of these qualified for the UEFA Champions League, so in theory at that point it could have been the case that Manchester City or Girona were going to be kicked out of the Champions League and demoted to the Europa League. Now, that never happened. They ended up sorting all that out. But it's not uncommon for teams to be owned by the same company to play in European competitions. I actually remember a good few years, I think it was about 5 years ago or so now, we had both of the big Red Bull clubs playing each other in the Champions League. Red Bull Salzburg and Red Bull Leipzig actually played each other in the UEFA Champions League in about 2020, I think it was. I'm sure it was one of the pandemic seasons. I think they're going to be fine with this one, to be honest with you, Crystal Palace. I don't think they're going to be kicked out of Europe personally, but in theory, this does go against multi-club ownership, and even if they were to be demoted down to the UEFA Conference League, then a similar situation will arise because David Blitzer, who is another owner of Crystal Palace, he actually has a majority shareholding in Brøndby over in Denmark, and they have qualified for the Conference League. And again, I think because of the way it works with the league placing, I think that means that in theory, if one of those guys were going to get kicked out, it would be Crystal Palace. Now, the rule actually states, and I quote, "No one may simultaneously be involved either directly or indirectly in any capacity whatsoever in the management, administration and or sporting performance of more than one club participating in a UEFA club competition. Or, no individual or legal entity may have control or influence over more than one club participating in a UEFA club competition. Such control or influence, such as holding a majority of the shareholders' voting rights, having the right to appoint or remove a majority of the club's members of the administrative, management or the supervisory body of the club, being a shareholder and alone controlling the majority of shareholdings voting rights pursuant to an agreement entered into another shareholdings at the club." So basically, if you've got a significant amount of influence in a club, then you can't own more than one club in one UEFA competition. Now, I would say that that does probably apply to Textor, but the fact that we've seen so many clubs get around this rule before, I mean, Marinakis, for example, right? He also owns, in addition to Nottingham Forest, he also owns Olympiacos, but the way he's got around it for this season coming up is that he basically has given his shares to a trust in Olympiacos, even though I believe that trust is influenced by him, so it's owned by him by proxy, effectively. It's complicated. These business dealings are rather opaque, to say the very least, right? Let's not get into the weeds on that one. So, long story short, I think Palace will be alright, but they are under investigation right now, and I hope to God they get into the Europa League, man. Like, it'd be their first ever European campaign. This would be such a shame if it got spoiled because of that. But your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Will Palace be kicked out of Europe? Will they be kicked out of the Europa League because of the multi-club ownership thing? I want to hear what you have to say in the comments below. Like, share, comment, subscribe as always, and let us know as well, should multi-club ownership be allowed in Europe? Because we're going to see a lot more of this. This is the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see a lot more of this. All these multi-club ownership models are so prevalent. They are everywhere in football these days, and they're getting bigger and bigger. So we're going to see more and more of these clashes as time goes on. But yeah, see you soon, guys. Have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world today.